Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. We're really excited to have you here today in the second of our year-long series of the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnerships Lunch and Learn Conservation webinars. We're really excited. Sonia is here with us today to talk about the Pay for Phosphorus RCPP program. And as a reminder, the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnerships purpose and mission is all about improving ag water quality in Vermont by coordinating partner efforts in providing education, technical, and financial assistance to the agricultural community. We have three main overarching goals. That's to improve water quality and wildlife habitat on all farmland engaged in partner programs, to deliver technical and financial assistance in an effective and efficient way for achieving our water quality goals, and that for those participating in our programs, that it's the best experience possible. Oh, all right. Later there'll be a survey. So I'm going to hand it over to Sonia now.
Hi everyone, glad to see you on here, and hopefully we can have a good conversation near the end with many of your questions, since there's not too many of you, so that's exciting. I'm going to start sharing and talk to you a little bit about a brand new program that's not even quite rolled out yet, that we've been developing at the Agency of Agriculture, and we will be rolling out this winter for participants in Vermont. So again, my name's Sonia Howlett. I've been very involved at the Agency of Agriculture with the development of the Vermont Pay for Phosphorus program. And we also have on the call Brody Hankey, who joined us recently and will be assisting with the rollout and the kind of ongoing, farmer and partner engagement around this program. So glad to have you on here, Brody, and maybe you can introduce yourself near the end. Today, I plan to share a little bit about our award and then how this program came to be. We can take a pause there for questions if people have any questions around payment for ecosystem services or any other work that's kind of led us into this space, and then I can share a little bit more about the details of the program and what we're looking at for next steps. And then I'd love to talk more with you about any questions you have or any suggestions, because again, it's a brand new program and we're still ideating on some parts of it. So the Vermont Pay for Phosphorus program is going to be administered by the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, but it was funded by the USDA, NRCS, RCPP, alternate funding arrangement program. So there have been RCPPs in this state before, so you know what that looks like. The alternate funding arrangement is actually a new opportunity that NRCS put out that's trying to fund more innovative projects with a more flexible funding strategy. So the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets will actually kind of hold the funds for this program and administer the contracts, which is different than previous RCPP AFAs. We got a 5-year grant, and we received $7 million to fund this program, of which $4.9 million will be going directly to producers. So the 5-year project timeline is going to involve 4 calendar years of producer involvement. It was a 2019-2020 grant, one of only about 10, I believe, across the country nationally. And there's, if you look it up, or I can drop a link in the chat later, you can read about some of the other projects, but several of them, similar to us, are in the pay for performance sphere. And what that means for us, we're paying for phosphorus. So we're paying for the outcomes of the practices rather than for cost share on the cost of installation of the practices. So it's more or less a shifting mindset towards how to quantify and compensate farmers for conservation. Some of the benefits of the paying for performance approach is that it could improve cost effectiveness because you're only paying when you receive a result, and could also help accelerate implementation in encouraging farmers to see what their results are and what they can do with their practices, and to get paid for that and feel compensated for that. And it can increase the flexibility because you can choose different ways to achieve your desired result. Our program is intended to complement existing programs, which I believe is pretty exciting. And we are planning to roll it out statewide. And like all NICS funded programs, it will be voluntary and not overlap at all with our regulatory role at the Agency of Ag. So at the current moment, we're doing some planning and analysis and starting to develop application and outreach related materials, planning to open this program for enrollment in winter of 2021. So soon, kind of scarily soon sometimes. And then our first enrolled group will be working with us throughout calendar year 2022 and receive their first payments at the end of that year. Then there's 3 more annual application enrollment cycles for the annual program we're planning to run. I'll talk a little bit more about all the details of how farmers and partners will engage with us over the course of the program. But I wanted to talk a little more about, how did we get to this point with this grant and rolling this out? So this program is building out of a lot of increasing interest that we've started to hear in Vermont and also across the US about ecosystem services, what they are and how we can value them and how we can develop payment for ecosystem services type programs. So ecosystem services are the various processes, the various outcomes associated with land management that benefit humans. So if you manage your land well, then you would create services that sustain humanity. Within the current farming marketplace, food and raw materials are the main ecosystem services that are compensated for, right? You get a milk check, you get money for your meat, you get money for your wool. However, farming or managing land can provide a vast number of other services that benefit humans, such as creating oxygen, sequestering carbon, being aesthetically pretty for people driving around the state of Vermont, filtering water, anything like that, or other ecosystem services that a farm or a well-managed forest or any land can provide. The idea behind payment for ecosystem services is that it is a way to assign value to those services and to directly compensate those who provide the services, the landholders, for that value. And that funding would presumably come from the people who are obtaining that value, the beneficiaries. So this idea within Vermont was first put forward by the farmer watershed groups who were advocating for saying, we aren't adequately valuing our farms, our milk checks are not very good, and how can we value the other benefits that you as a public are getting from our farms in a way that makes sense and that can potentially sustain our farming community. Coming out of that, there's a PES working group that's been ongoing. It's meeting, I think, every first and third Tuesday at this point. And they've been starting to think a lot about this question. If you're interested in seeing their work or joining one of their meetings, it's on our website, agriculture.vermont.gov/PES, and that's a really interesting body of work. And then there's been a number of other conservation innovation grant initiatives and some farmer and stakeholder feedback panels happening as well. So a whole lot of thinking going into how this could work in Vermont. One of the big questions coming up in those types of discussion are the ideas behind, would you pay for practice implementation or would you pay for the performance and pay for the outcomes? Different pros and cons to each one. Practice is simpler, easier to calculate. Performance is more specific, tied to the actual benefit. And part of that discussion has identified that we actually do have payment for ecosystem services payments in Vermont. We just are only paying for practices. We're paying for the conservation benefits, for the water quality benefits in particular, associated with farming practices through all of the conservation programs that you know and maybe love, hopefully appreciate. Paying for performance, however, is newer and much more exciting to a lot of those stakeholders in those conversations. The idea behind, really being able to quantify the benefit and go into the next level of scientific and field specific detail is a really exciting space to be moving into. Another major thought process that the Payment for Ecosystem Services Working Group is looking at is, okay, well, we know we want to pay for performance, but performance of what? Do we want to be broad and holistic and say, yes, managing land well has all of these benefits and try to capture those, or to focus in on one ecosystem service? And that group has more or less decided that they really want to take the time and the effort to put together a proposal that's holistic and can capture as many ecosystem services as they can. And that group's focusing in on soil health, which is both this ecosystem service of its own, but also has many other benefits that they're hoping to tease out from it, like flooding mitigation, water filtration, infiltration, soil or water retention, etc. We at the Agency of Agriculture were part of that group. We're learning a lot, and we thought that's amazing. And we think that we have the means now to start a smaller, more focused program. So we chose to apply for this Pay for Phosphorus program, kind of as an outshoot of some of those conversations, saying, yeah, we love the holistic approach, and we think we can start with this now and keep engaging and supporting the holistic ideal moving forward through the working group. So the Pay for Phosphorus program said, okay, we're going to focus on phosphorus. And the reason for that is, as you all know very well, Lake Champlain Basin has, and the rest of Vermont have, a number of total maximum daily loads assigned. Very nutrient reductions are a priority within our state. And it's something that we know how to measure, we know is important, and we have a lot of kind of background knowledge on where we're at and where we need to get to with phosphorus. As you all also know, we've been making a lot of progress over the last couple of years in accounting for the reductions that we're making. Agriculture has really stepped up early to be able to account for the reductions that they're making and develop processes to track them, and just to get a lot of implementation onto the ground. And yet, also, as you will know, we are not really yet meeting our targets at all, and we have quite a long way to go till 2038 target assessed by the EPA. And this is all for the Lake Champlain Basin. Other parts of Vermont obviously have other reduction targets, but Lake Champlain Basin covers the most of Vermont and is very, very well quantified and well understood. So when we started thinking about this, we've said, well, we want our program to apply statewide, but we can maybe tie everyone to this well understood concept from Lake Champlain. We also have been looking at the number of payments, or the amount of payments going out to farms through these and other sectors through these programs, and realizing that when we looked at that definition of payment for ecosystem services, there was this idea of a value to conservation. And these payments that we've been putting out, which DC creates this nice graph every year of how much money we're spending in different sectors, shows, one, that the state of Vermont and the public really do value phosphorus reductions, and two, that phosphorus reductions in agriculture are the most cost effective. So if we put together a program that takes some of these numbers and says, this is the value that Vermont has for phosphorus reductions, we have a clear quantification of that we can pass back to farmers, and that we can really be leveraging a space within the agricultural field that's very effective. So the Pay for Phosphorus program was born. I'm going to talk a little bit more in a moment about how it's going to work, but does anyone have any questions at this point about how we got here, payment for ecosystem services in general, or anything like that? And Allie, I'll rely on you to help if people have chat or their hands up.
Yep, I don't see any questions in the chat or any hands up at this point.
Okay, I'll keep moving then. So we developed this program, and I'm going to kind of walk through the annual way that a farm would interact with us as a way to kind of hopefully explain how the program is going to work. So starting this winter and then future winters thereafter, we as the Agency of Agriculture are going to manage this application process all the way through to the contracts. And farms will apply to us, and then we are going to work with NRCS to make sure they're eligible for payments. And then if farmers are a first-time applicant, we will contract with them for data entry payment, which I'll talk about in a moment. Any farm in the state of Vermont is eligible across the state. At this current point in time, we're looking at only being able to model annual crop or hay fields. So unfortunately at this point, pasture and veggie, orchard, maple, anything like that are not able to be in this program, although we're looking very seriously at trying to figure out how we could incorporate at least pasture in the future. But if you as a farmer have cropland or have hayland, you can apply. A pretty important component is that you must have an up-to-date nutrient management plan, whatever that looks like in the RAPs for your farm size. But up-to-date soil tests for your fields are going to be important because this program is trying to look holistically at the management you're doing, and that nutrient management plan is a key important prerequisite. And then, basic Agency of Ag and NRCS eligibility criteria. So when farms apply and say, yes, we're interested in this program, the first thing they do is they get their farm management data, which is generally represented in their nutrient management plan, their rotations, their nutrient management, any cover cropping, other conservation practices they're doing. We're all entering all that information into a modeling tool, Farm Prep. The idea behind the data entry payment is that's a lot of time, and that's a lot of information that you're sharing, and there's a value to your time and there's a value to your information. So we modeled our payment rates on the, I think, cap payment, but tweaked it a little. And the idea is you as a farmer are eligible for a TA payment to you for your time engaging with that. We're looking at $15 an acre up to a maximum of $4,000 for those just data entry payments. We do have an RFP that's out now with bids due October 20th for partners to help farms or with that data entry and some other tasks we'll talk about later as well. Or farmers are, if they want to, could actually input their own or pay a TSP to input their own data. And that's fine as long as it comes to us complete. And once it is complete and in Farm Prep, then they'd be able to receive this payment. Again, this is only the first time they do that, because if they come back years 2, years 3, years 4, that information is already in the tool, and so hopefully it's a lot quicker process. Farm Prep is the modeling tool of choice. It is calibrated for Vermont. It's actually a build out, or probably build down of the Apex model. That's NRCS's model. It's designed to be more streamlined, a little easier to use than Apex, and it also is calibrated in Vermont with Vermont data. Stone Environmental's done a lot of that work, and we have a contract with them right now to make a new Farm Prep build out, like an extension application that's designed specifically for this program and its needs. So Farm Prep, as you know, it is still going to exist, but there's going to be a new VPFP Farm Prep as well. And it is a tool that is able to calculate the phosphorus lost from every field, aggregate it across fields, and compare that to some baseline. And it's pretty focused on location-specific data, such as the soil types, the slope, and your soil tests. Another exciting thing about this tool is you can compare different scenarios within the tool, which allows farmers the autonomy to say, oh, look, I'd have less phosphorus loss from this field if I did this practice, and this is exactly how much less this tool is estimating, and they can really get as deep as they want into the numbers and the various assessments, and really use that for their planning, which is, I think, exciting. So once you've entered, as a farm, you've entered all your data in Farm Prep and you've received this data entry payment, the second type of payment that you might want to be eligible for is the phosphorus-based payment, which is going to be based on the actual installation of those practices that you say you're going to implement when you filled out Farm Prep. Our current plan is that second payment type is going to be subject to a more competitive ranking process. Anyone who gets all their information in Farm Prep can receive the data entry payment, but depending on the number of applicants, we're likely to work with some funding pools to try to allocate funding strategically within watersheds to prioritize money going towards places where the most reductions are required, and also some other priorities and strategies for ranking that we plan to develop with other members of the partnership and with stakeholders. And the overall goal of this is, be able to spread funding out as much as we can, be equitable, and also be efficient. And that's a hard trade-off often, but try to figure out how can we get this out where it's the most useful and the most valuable and the most equitable all at once. Once the ranking process is complete, we'd select a smaller cohort with contracts for the pay for phosphorus-based payment. And there's a graph on the next slide, which I'll show you, but the idea is this payment is based on the pound of phosphorus reductions from a year's conservation practices, nutrient management, chosen rotations, etc. And when we say reduction, it's a reduction compared to this historic management assumption that's based on the total maximum daily load. We also intend to pay above this additionality threshold that we'll set, which more or less is the idea that there's certain expectations of farms in Vermont already. There's certain practices that might be considered normal or just like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. And so when we're calculating out what's above and beyond, what's an exceptional, great reduction, we want to subtract out those reductions that might just be, the normal expected. Every farm should be doing that reductions. We have not yet determined a price per pound. Obviously, that's a really important component, but that's something we're working on. We don't want to just choose a number out of a hat. And in order to be paid on this, there will be a verification protocol that I'll talk about in a sec as well. So this graph, my colleague Judson put together, trying to explain a little bit about the baseline versus the current reductions. So if you think of the baseline, it's for every field specific to the field's slope and the field's soil type, what the total maximum daily load for the Lake Champlain Basin would have assumed that farm was doing when that TMDL was created. Which is a kind of funny way of doing it, but we decided that we wanted to, we want all these phosphorus reductions in the state of Vermont are based off the TMDL, all those requirements, and everything we're doing now is based off the total maximum daily loads. So if we're valuing phosphorus, it's valued in comparison to the total maximum daily load. And the way that works is it's independent of what the farm actually was doing 10 years ago, which creates a space where, you know, farms that maybe have been doing these good conservation practices for many, many years are not at a disadvantage in this program because they're being compared to these flat, statewide, similar assumptions. And I also think that that's another really exciting part of this program. We can talk more if people have questions on that. But essentially, any farm of a similar type will be compared to the same flat. By type, I mean like soil type and slope. So if you have similar kind of geological characteristics on your farm and on the neighbor's farm, it doesn't matter what you were doing 10 years ago or what they were doing 10 years ago. All that matters is what you're doing now. So the current is what you're doing now. It's being compared back to those modeled assumptions. The base reductions are getting you up to the threshold of this is just expected reductions from following the RAPs or, you know, engaging in existing programs. And then these additional reductions are what we're intending to pay for. You're going above and beyond, you're doing more than you're being asked to do, and that is highly valuable to the state of Vermont, to the public, and we will pay you for that. So when I talked about the total maximum daily load assumptions, this is what they look like for poorly drained soils with low slope, is they assumed permanent corn, the TMDL assumed permanent corn on that type of land. And then there were a set of management styles that went into the total maximum daily load estimate of the phosphorus loading from those fields. So we're attempting to replicate the similar process for this program in the background of our modeling tool. Zooming out of the calculations, the payment is going to be based on verification and upkeep of the data over the course of the year. So farms should know going into this that records are going to be very important for this program, because we're looking at the entire farm's management, and we want to make sure that when we run that through farm prep and get a number that we pay on, that it's correct. So they're supposed to keep records anyway, but this is yet another thing saying you have to keep records and we need to be able to read them so that we can see that what you put in farm prep is correct. Then once you've, let's say, spread your manure, if it's anything different than was in your NMP or your original plan, we're asking farms to work with their partners to go back into farm prep later in the year and say, yes, I said it was going to be 8,000 gallons an acre. I actually put on 10,000. That's might be okay, but we just want it to be correct in farm prep. So we're working with the right data. And then at the end of the season or at various times throughout the season, we'll have third-party verification of the installation through our contracted TA providers. So both of these tasks are included in the RFP that's out now. This is kind of everything I just went through, but color coded. And maybe it's, I don't know if it's more confusing or less confusing, but I attempted to show kind of where in the year the producers and the partners and the Agency of Ag and NRCS are all interacting to bring this program together. Like many things within our partnership, there's a lot of collaboration going into this program. And then all that work is happening on a seasonal cycle annually throughout the year. And we did try to split the tasks up throughout the calendar year for our partners and for ourselves to be, spread the work out, provide things to do throughout the year. Again, this is a 5-year program, so we're rolling out for 2022 as our first year of enrollment, starting with 50 to 60 farms, and then hopefully slowly enrolling more and more farms every year, hopefully retaining some of the farms that started with us year 1, and having 4 total years of producer enrollment. And at this point in time, our grant window is done in 2026. Again, this is a work in progress. I think you probably picked that up by now, but we have a lot of questions that we still need to answer before this is a fully functional program, and so that we can provide the best guidance we can to our farms and to our partners. It is probably still going to be a work in progress once we roll it out. So we're hoping in advance that partners and farmers can be flexible with us year 1 as we do our best to communicate clearly and share what we know and don't know, but recognize that the things might change. To the end of knowing as much as we can now, we currently have a conservation innovation grant that we were awarded by the state of Vermont NRCS, and we are working with 13 farms to incorporate their data into farm prep and analyze that to answer some of the questions on the previous slide and get a better reading on what we're likely to see in the Pay for Phosphorus program from farms, so that can affect various program decisions. Now, we also are working with a stakeholder advisory panel made up of farmers plus select members of various partner organizations. And the goal of that essentially is to have some knowledgeable people out in the landscape who know about this program and can share about this program, and also to get the two-way conversation going where they can share information back with us. If they hear feedback from farmers, share that with us so we can make this program as effective as it can be. That's all I have for today. I'll stop sharing in a moment. The webpage we have going is at agriculture.vermont.gov/VPFP, and we plan to add more materials and outreach there as we develop them. I'm a good contact after this if people have any questions. Ryan's also been involved kind of at the higher level, and Brody, who's on this call, is also going to be very, very involved with the program. So I'll take questions, and if you have any more, you're always welcome to reach out to me after. And I'm going to have to try to figure out how to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Sonia. It was really great to have that really clear, in-depth overview of this program. Do folks have questions? Well, I'm not seeing any in the chat. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to stop recording.